Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are today. I just wanted to say I'm so very happy to be here with you today. This is a really exciting time, right, Yuri? Because we now have a co host for this program, Seeds of Knowledge, which is a program of Solitude Center of Spiritual Living. And today, Yuri is here with me to talk about a very important topic in my mind, which is the notion of spiritual depuration. Good morning, Yuri. Hope you're doing well.
Good morning, Marcia. I'm doing good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody out there.
Yeah, it's morning here in the East and Central time zones, right? In here in the U.S. But it's so good to be with you. If this is the first time you tune in to one of our discussions, please note, as I mentioned before, this is a new series for this year, and we will meet every first and third Sunday of the month. So be on the lookout for enlightening discussions, and really we welcome your thoughts, your ideas. Please put them in the chat window so that we can come back to you. I wanted just to take a moment here, if you don't mind, to maybe for those who do not yet know you, to get to know a little bit more. So Yuri Castro is a spiritist volunteer. He is committed to dissemination and the practice of spiritist teachings. He's a member of the Conscious Living Spiritist group in North Miami, Florida, and professionally, he's a clinical psychologist. I want to say thank you, Yuri, and please take it away. I'm going to make sure that your presentation is this correct, and I'll be in the backstage. Please let me know if you need anything. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Marcia. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about this very important topic called spiritual depuration. So, the idea for this topic, let's start with the word depuration. So, the definition of depuration is this purification of impurities. So, when we're thinking of the process of the depuration itself, one image, it's actually the image that inspired me to do this talk and combine it with spiritist teachings, is this idea of a filter. So some of you may have seen this sort of filter or something similar to that. And the notion that I wanted to bring today to the table is specifically related to our spiritual depuration, our getting rid of, our purification of our own impurities that we carry through the evolutionary process of our immortal spirit, of our immortal being, our immortal selves. Okay, so the idea here, again, come to think of this filter and how is the process when the water goes through, it goes through these different layers. We're going to see that we also go through different layers when we are going through the process of spiritual depuration. First and foremost, I want to say that for those who have not watched my talks, on the top right corner of the screen, you're going to have the source material for that specific slide. And in this one, we're going to be talking about something that the spiritual guide Emmanuel, through the psychograph of Chico Xavier, in this book called The Way, the Truth, and the Life, he told us about inner cleansing. So if we go actually back a little bit more to the Bible, we're going to see a few references to depuration, to cleansing, to purification. One is this one where Jesus says, wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you of double mind. And this one we find in James. And double mind in this notion right here has to do with being confused or be doubtful in thoughts. So Emmanuel is going to explain a little bit more, and he's going to say that this inner world is the source of all good and bad principles, and all outward expressions have their basis there. So the analogy here is that it is this inner world is the source of all good and bad principles, and the expressions that we see outwardly, meaning everything that goes out of us, our actions, our words, even our thoughts, they are the expressions of something inward. So something that goes inside, something that is a reflection of our inner selves. So Emmanuel says that this inner cleansing, meaning this changing of our own selves, the internal selves, which will then manifest outwardly, is not something that's very simple. It's something that is quite hard, actually, because this Emmanuel is going to say that this renewal can never be achieved at the cost of fine-sounding words only. It has to come through the process of our actions, and our inner transformation then will change our actions. But if we take a step back and we go to the Spirit's book and we're talking about spiritual depuration, we have to understand the role of matter. Yes, the role of matter in our spiritual depuration. So in the question number 22, they asked the spirits, what definition can you give of matter? And they said, matter is the element which enchains, pay attention to this word, enchains, meaning put these chains, enchains spirit, the instrument which serves it, and upon which at the same time it exerts its action. So meaning the spirit is gonna exert its action on the matter, which in a way enchains the spirit. It's a very interesting choice of word here. But what is the spirit then? The spirit is the intelligent principle of the universe. As we're all created simple and ignorant out of a spark of love of our Creator, our dear Father, our God, we are this intelligent principle that always evolves. We're always and constantly evolving. So matter has a say in it. Matter has, let's say, it's a vehicle for that evolution, for that spiritual purification or depuration. Is spirit independent of matter, or is it only one of the properties of matter? And they're going to say spirit and matter are distinct from one another, but the union of spirit and matter is necessary to give intelligent activity to matter. Meaning, matter on its own if it doesn't have an intelligent principle to act behind it, its value is very limited, we can say. And we can, of course, expound on this discussion even further, but that's not the whole purpose of the talk today. But the idea basically here for us to understand is that the spirit is going to animate the matter. The spirit is going to use the matter as a means of its own purification, as its own depuration. And they are, as we see from the answer that they give us, they are different things. The spirit and the matter are different things. In the book, again, The Way, the Truth, and the Life, Emmanuel is going to say that each spiritual personality has a fluidic body. Have you ever noticed that flesh is composed of condensed fluids? So that actually the title of this message is What is Flesh? And one thing that he says that I thought was very interesting is that Emmanuel says that flesh is the earthly home where the spirit is in command. So in a way, our bodies, the flesh, the matter that we have under our control is this sort of home, is this sort of thing that we can control that will help us in our process of depuration. Of course, when these fluids combine, they obey the imperatives of life on earth. You have designated this process as the law of heredity. However, this combining process is passive and is not self-determining. So the process is passive, is not self-determining. And the idea here that these fluids, when they combine, is they obey the imperatives of laws that are from our Creator. These are laws that we cannot necessarily break. And the notion too that these fluids, meaning the matter, that when is congregated, when it's added to one another to form something else, let's say a fetus, and then it develops into, let's say, a baby, and then a baby into a full-grown adult, all that development of that matter specifically obeys these laws. But it's interesting for us to think too that Spiritism has expanded this idea of the matter and the spiritual connection with the matter by also highlighting the fact that there are many mansions out there, meaning there are places and there are types of matter that we still don't know out there. So that's something important for us to realize as well. Emmanuel also tells us about the sins of the flesh, which are the wrongs caused by the unevolved condition of the spiritual human being. So the sins of the flesh then are these wrongs caused because or due to our unevolved condition, our these problems that we create for ourselves more often than not, they are there still because we are still evolving as human beings. And then on the Spirits book, we have question number 96, which is very interesting. It asks, are all spirits equal, or does there exist among them a hierarchy of ranks? And they're going to say there are different degrees according to the degree of purification, look at that word, to which they have attained. So they're saying there are different degrees or different levels of purification depending. So these degrees, they vary depending on how advanced the spirit is. Is there a fixed number? So this is the curiosity of those asking, which I can definitely relate to. Is there a fixed number of order or degrees of purification among spirits? And they're going to say the number of such orders is unlimited, because there's nothing like a barrier or line or of demarcation between the different degrees of elevation. Nevertheless, and I thought they were very kind to consider our curiosity. The higher spirits were very kind in considering our own curiosity. They said, nevertheless, if we consider the general characteristic of spirits, we may reduce them to 3 principal orders or degrees. So it's important that they're going to explain, and I'm going to show these orders or these degrees of spirits that relate to their advancement. But again, it's important for us to keep in mind that this is merely educational, I would say. This is didactic in a way, because there's no clear line of demarcation, just as with the worlds. When they say the classification of the world and they give us a specific number and specific characteristics, it's way more complicated than that. But again, for us to understand and for us to start to grasp on some of these concepts, I very much appreciate that we are giving numbers and some demarcation. So if we go to the Spirits book again, still, when we're talking about the order of spirits, so the third order, and so it goes from third, second to first, the first being the most elevated one. So the third order, they say that there are 5 different subcategories. These are what they call the imperfect spirits. So in these spirits, there's a predominance of matter over spirity. There's a propensity to evil. There's ignorance, pride, selfishness, and all of the evil passions that result from these inclinations. And they don't have a full comprehension of God. But not all are thoroughly bad, because if we go to the impures, which is the 10th, and we compare it to the noisy and boisterous, or 6, or even the neutral 7, there is already an evolution between the 10th and the 6th and the 7th, for instance. That's why they're in these categories. But the idea here is that there's this predominance, and if you think of matter and spirit as well, this is an interesting thing for us to realize. The lower in the rank, meaning like the third order compared to the first order, for instance, the lower the rank, the higher the influence of matter on the spirit. The higher in that rank, the lower the influence of matter, the more spiritual life, the more willpower the spirit will have over matter. So we have third order with those categories right there. Then we have the second order, and there are 4 subcategories or distinctions here. And for this one, they already say that there is a predominance of spirit over matter. There's a desire of excellence, and some of them already possess this knowledge, and they have acquired wisdom and charity. They're more advanced, but they still have to undergo. This is interesting. They still have to undergo trials in order for them to complete their work of purification. So the subcategories of the second order are the high, the wise, the learned, and the benevolence, which already by the word usage here, we can already tell that it looks, or it sounds, way better than the ones in the third order. And again, as we progress through the order, also the influence of spirit and matter is going to shift, is going to change. And so will the planets that they will inhabit, which is something for us to think about too. And then we have the first order, and there's only one class. And they say these are the pure spirits. So the third order are the imperfect spirits. Second order, the good. They call it the good spirits. And the first order, the pure spirits. And these, there's only one class. And these spirits have passed through every degree in the scale of purification, meaning they didn't go from, let's say, frivolous, ninth, to first. There's no leaps in nature. Evolution is slow and is a process and is gradual. But they already went through all of those stages that we see on our screen to get to the first order. And they have freed, the spirits will say that they have freed themselves from all impurities of materiality. They have attained the sun of perfection, of which created beings are susceptible, and they don't have to undergo the trials and expiations or all the tribulations that are associated with going through suffering and pain in order to reach their spiritual depuration. They already have. And these are, we only had one spirit of the first order that came to us a little over 2,000 years ago now. And it's a spirit that has billions and billions of years. So again, it already passed through all of those things that which we are way, way down on that scale, I dare say. We are still going through, but we're gonna get there. It's the end goal for everybody, the plenitude of the spirit, the spiritual depuration. So in the message 150 called Goads, in the book The Way, the Truth, and the Life, Emmanuel's going to tell us that the evolutionary way is covered with goads. So for those, I wasn't created in the field, in a rural area, I had to research what goads are because I had an idea what they are, but I wanted to see. So I went and I researched, and goads are actually this it's this pointed rod that is used to prod an animal. That's like something pricking them from behind for them to go forward, for the animal to go forward. So let's see, because Emmanuel does love this word goad a lot. According to this plan, Jesus has created the noblest stimulations for the terrestrial sphere. So the biggest example we have ever had. Thus, wealth and poverty, homeliness and beauty, suffering and struggles are actually goads or opportunities implemented by Christ for the benefit of humankind. So these things are created, or they are there for us to evolve. Each of one of those presents a different and unique challenge for us in our process, which is also very unique. And there are these goals. They propel us forward. And he says each existence has its particular difficulty, as does each person, but this symbolizes a blessed opportunity. Examine your life, identify your goals, and do not rebel against them. So the idea of us not rebelling against the goals that are there for our own benefit. And it's interesting for us to think that there is something prodding us on our backs, and something that's pricking us, uh, propelling us to go forward, so we don't stop or we don't delay our own evolution. I mean, we can't really stop, but we can very well delay. So we don't delay our own evolution. There's something prodding us, these goads. And Emmanuel is saying that for us, or he's urging us not to rebel against these goads. God, and he continues, God gives himself to the children of his entire creation, sharing with all of them the treasures of his infinite love, stimulating them to evolve by means of 1,000 different ways. There are so many different ways that we can evolve. There are so many different planets we can inhabit, bodies we can have, matter we can come across, so forth and so on. Still, there are many spheres like Earth where the inhabitants have not yet grasped these glorious realities, and so they halt their own progress, slumbering on the bed of illusion. So slumbering on the bed of illusion, thinking that there's only one life sometimes, or that there is no God, or that the material things in life are the ones we should be pursuing at all costs, sacrificing everything and everyone for a better car, a better house, a better jewelry, or something that's material, or better image, a better physical appearance, sacrificing everything, which is, he's saying, is slumbering on the bed of illusion. Because the thing is, when we fully grasp the idea that these goals, these opportunities that we are given are very unique, and they are ultimately, even the painful ones, they are ultimately for our own good, then we're going to look at things differently, and hopefully we can act differently. And that's why Emmanuel says, examine your own goals. He tells us, examine your own goals and do not rebel against them. Now we go to the book Between Heaven and Earth, and this one is a book also psychographed by Chico, and this one is the spirit author is André Luiz. And in this one there is a passage where the narrator, the main character André, he's with Hilario, who is a mentor of sorts, and Blandina, who is another more evolved spirit. They're talking about this school in the spiritual plane, and she says that evolution. She says something that's very striking. She says evolution, competence, personal growth, and sublimation are the result of constant toil. The more knowledge we possess, the more active we are. Idleness keeps our mental energies focused on the lowest planes of life. Toil is a blessing. Because in this school that they were studying, André Luiz was asking, but do we really need to study like here as well? Like he was asking questions of that nature, and understanding how does knowledge factor in our own evolution. And she's talking about that the more knowledge we possess, the more active we are, and that we should not be idle. We're not going to continue our process as it should go, with the pace that it should go, of spiritual depuration, if we're idle. Because as according to Blandina, she says that idleness keeps our mental energies focused on the lowest planes of life. So if we're just we're just idle, doing nothing for ourselves and for others, we're not going to achieve the pace that we want to achieve, and we're not going to be continuing with this process that we must continue through. So knowledge is very important, but obviously, as they also talk in this book, that's not just about knowledge. She's not saying that it's only acquiring knowledge and that's it. We need to utilize that knowledge, and that's why talks like this one, I think, of this nature, not this one specific, but this nature, are very important for us to understand and have this knowledge, acquire this knowledge, become inspired, so we can change. We can effect change in ourselves. And that's part of our own evolution. Now moving to one of my favorite authors of all, Leon Denis, in the book, The Problem of Life and Destiny, he's going to talk about free will. This is chapter 23. It's only about free will, chapter number 23. He's going to say freedom or liberty is a necessary condition of the human soul, which without it could not construct its destiny. Therefore, let us rise to the conscience of our true role and goal, and we will be free. Through our efforts, our teachings, and our examples, let us make sure that not only willpower, but also goodwill and good itself prevail. Also, instead of forming passive beings bent under the yoke of matter and prey to uncertainty and inertia, let us fashion truly free souls, freed from the chains of fate. So he's talking here about the chains of fate. So the idea that free will, which is a condition that we have as immortal spirits, we have the free will to choose as we please and to act as we please. And that's why we often find ourselves in difficult situations, because we ourselves have put us, our own selves, in this situation, either in this life, or it could be in past lives, and then we're having to expiate in this one, or accept new trials because of things that we have done. So the idea, he's saying that with free will, which is this innate condition of the spirit, the evolved intelligent principle, as humans as we are, we have already evolved much from the lower forms of life, of that intelligent principle. We have the free will, and it breaks us from the chains of fate, meaning we don't just assign things to fate, thinking that we are mere observers of our own movie, of the own movie of our lives. He says that the soul is the author of its own destiny. It is. We are the authors of our own destinies because of our free will. And one of the process that we go through, this one is the book Good News, psychographed by Chico. And one of the processes that we go through in this spiritual depuration is the reincarnations. So this inhabiting of different material forms that are goals, and there are also things that we can utilize for our own benefit. So in this book, they're going to say that the body is just a garment, and all material garments eventually become tattered. But as God's children, human beings will always find in His love the elements they need to change the garment. What are these elements? What do they mean by changing the garment? By the forgiveness out of love from our Father for our own sins, our own mistakes. And then we are granted the blessing of a new opportunity with each and every reincarnation. The death, they're going to say, the death of the body is that essential change, because the soul will continue to journey through other experiences until it receives enough light for the final pathway into the kingdom of God, with all the perfection it has achieved on the rough roads it has traveled. Those who abuse the tunic of wealth will wear those of the humblest slaves and servants in the future, just as the hands that wound others may be severed. So basically what they're saying is this process of reincarnation. They can sometimes adopt different formats, and sometimes they can be the same format, because we need to go through that. And in the book, there's a good example here. In the book called Memoirs of a Suicide, psychographed by Yvonne, where two of the characters that had died by suicide, they were in the spiritual plane and they were planning their next reincarnation. One of the characters, named Silveira, he was gonna reincarnate. He had a reincarnation where he was very knowledgeable, extremely intelligent, and had a lot of wealth. He misused that. Eventually, he died by suicide. But when he was going to reincarnate, he was going to come again with that intelligence, knowledge, wealth, using this basically similar, or if not the same instruments that he had been granted before, because he needed to go through that. Whereas there's this other character in that same book, a friend of Silveira. They become friends, Mario. And Mario, he used his hands in a very deadly way, not only to kill himself, but to take the life of someone else. So in the next reincarnation that he's planning, he's going to come without his hands. So it's a different, you see, there's a difference in the ways that they're going to reincarnate, because they need to expiate, they need the trials, they need these certain things. And the spirituality, out of love from God, will grant them that opportunity. So if we bring back the idea of the filter, because I love this image, this vision of the filter, sorry, and the water going through that filter. I got this very simple drawing here of this makeshift filter with different components. So if we think of a very muddy, let's say impure water going in, this is how we are created, simple and ignorant. And this here is going to be an illustration for us to visualize what we've been talking about. Then let's say in one reincarnation, we're going to go through slavery. And then in the other one, we're going to be royalty. And then the other one, we're going to be afflicted by a disease. And then the other one, we're going to be extremely poor. The other one, we're going to have a lot of power. That could be intelligence, could be wealth, could be fame, could be whatever that is. All of that in order for us to reach the depuration. So again, this is extremely condensed. This is it's overly simplistic, but I just wanted to bring this here as an idea for us to realize that even by looking at that filter right there, this process of the depuration of the water, it goes through different layers. All those layers are not the same. It goes through different layers, and each layer has its own function, serves its own purpose. So the reincarnations that we go through, they also serve their own purpose for us in order for us to continue to evolve and continue in the process of spiritual depuration. And in the end, we're going to come like that, like the water, like purified, as our spirits will come like that after going through all of that, all of those layers. And in the book Living Spring, it's a beautiful book of messages, psychographed by Chico. This is by the author Emmanuel. I brought a few messages here talking about suffering, because as we saw in the previous slide, in that illustration, a lot of those layers aren't good, aren't things that we would seek. Who would seek a disease? Who would seek slavery? Who would seek extreme poverty, scarcity? Those are things we don't seek, but the thing is, they are necessary for us in different stages of our immortal life. So message number 61, Emmanuel is going to say, as long as you live on a plane of practice such as the earth, you will continue to be confronted with problems and suffering. Message 141, each day has a lesson for us. Each experience leaves behind its corresponding value. Each problem entails a determined objective. Every day is a lesson. Every day we can take something good from all of these things that we suffer through on a daily basis. And he's saying that as long as we're on Earth, which is a planet that's far from being highly evolved on the scale of planets, as a matter of fact, it's a second out of 5, the first being primitive, is the plan of trials and expiations. We're still very far from the divine or happy worlds. We're going to find suffering. We're going to suffer. We're going to have an influence of the matter over us. Let us remember that the inner man continues to be renewed. The struggle enriches it with experience. Pain purifies its emotion, and sacrifice tempers its character. How beautiful is that, actually? The struggle enriches it with experience, this inner man. Pain purifies its emotion, and sacrifice is going to temper the character. So you see, all these words are aimed at the inner person, at this inner transformation, this inner purification that's going to be achieved through sacrifice, through pain, through the struggles, and all these things that we go through. But it's a touchy subject. So what do we do with our suffering? What do we do with our pain? And there's again this illustration here that I thought was interesting. I wanted to bring. We can do a couple of things with our suffering and with our pain. We can just simply suffer, let it crush us. We can drag our pain. We can analyze our pain. Just that, just analyze for the sake of it. We can dialogue with it. We can learn from our own pain, think about it. We can then accept it at some extent, and at last we can transform it. We can transform the pain, transform the suffering. And I love this little image of the guy with the boulder there. Because if we think about it, oftentimes we go through this process here, not necessarily in this specific order. Oftentimes it is in this specific order. But we go through this process here, and that's exactly what the filter is going to help us do. With some incarnations and some stages of life, we just may suffer from the pain, and we don't do anything with it, or we just drag it along to another reincarnation, to the spiritual realm. Eventually, as we go down, we're going to start to understand as it comes again, again, and again. We're going to start to accept it, learn from it, accept it. And then once we accepted it, we transform it. In the gospel according to Spiritism, it says that pain is a blessing sent by God to all his elected. So when you suffer, do not allow yourself to become afflicted. Rather, bless the omnipotent who, through the pain of this world, has chosen you to receive glory in heaven. And this made me think a lot of Paul, the apostle, where he would be going through so much suffering, so much pain, and all the while he was just praising God, and he would be singing, and he would be having tears of joy the more pain he suffered, because he said God considered himself, Jesus considered himself, actually, I think that's what he used to say, worthy of that pain, of those difficult trials. Because if we're thinking of a benevolent God, we cannot imagine a God that will put suffering, unnecessary or undue suffering, in those beings that he loves just for the sake of it. That's not a just God. That's not a loving God, benevolent Heavenly Father. If there is benevolence, as there is, then the suffering must have a purpose. The suffering must be a way for us to purify ourselves. And Joanna de Angelis, in the book Happy Life, psychographed by Divaldo, she says, the pain faced with resignation decreases in intensity. Just as like Paul, when he was resigned, when he exercised resignation in the face of pain, and the very painful events he went through, it definitely decreased in intensity because he was accepting it, he was transforming that pain and thinking himself worthy. And in the book Action and Reaction, there's this Silas tells André this very nice passage, this very nice saying or sentence when they were talking about suffering. He said that whenever our pain doesn't cause new pain, and whenever our affliction doesn't cause affliction in those around us, our death is in the process of expiring. Wow. So whenever our pain is not causing new pain on ourselves or someone else, especially those around us, our death is in the process of expiring. Meaning we are evolving. We are already achieving success in that specific challenge. What is the most efficacious method, then, for ensuring one's own moral improvement in the present life and resisting the attraction of evil? Spirits are going to tell us, one of the sages of antiquity has told you, know thyself. As we look inward, as we look to ourselves and we see what we need to change, what are the goals that we have, the blessed goals we have in our lives, we are going to understand a lot about what we're going through, what we need to go through, and what we still need to improve. We can even have an idea sort of the filter. If we imagine the water filter again with the different layers, we can even start to have an idea of what layer we're currently in and what we're going through. So the idea of knowing ourselves, knowing thyself, as they said, is the most efficacious way of knowing our own more improvement in our life and to not be tempted by evil. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, when we're talking about progress, because the whole idea of spiritual depuration has embedded in it this idea of progress. Progress is a law of nature. All beings of creation, be they animated or not, have been submitted to this law through the bounty of God, who wishes everything to be exalted and to prosper. Even actual destruction, which appears to man to be the end of everything, is only a means of reaching a more perfect state through transformation. Seeing that everything that dies only to be reborn again, suffering no consequence from the annihilation. So this idea that there is progress embedded in everything, and for us to rebel against that progress, rebel against our goals that are prodding us forward, that are pushing us forward, is the idea of stalling this progress. But this progress, like I said before, or as I alluded before, can take place in many different areas, in many different locations even. The house of the Father, we see in the Gospel according to Spiritism, is the universe. The different mansions spoken in the Bible are the worlds which circulate in infinite space and offer the spirits who incarnate on them dwelling places which correspond their progress. Conforming to whether the soul is more or less purified and detached from material lies, the ambient in which it finds itself will vary infinitely. So this is from chapter number 3 from the Gospel according to Spiritism, called "In My Father's House Are Many Mansions." And if we think about this the process of depuration as we inhabit different places, we can go back to a few different books in Spiritism that talk about the Capella situation, which are these spirits that had to reincarnate on Earth because they were not able to continue in their planet, because their planet has reached a certain level of evolution and they had not been able to accompany that. So they came to Earth, which at that time was lower on the scale than their own planet. But here they continue their own evolution. So they already came with knowledge, they already came with their own problems and their own things to contribute to us here. And here they found a place for them to continue to evolve. In the book Our Daily Bread, Emmanuel is going to say, Christ began his divine mission among peasants. He lived among irascible doctors of the law and rebellious sinners. He associated with the sick and the afflicted. He ate the hard bread of humble fishermen and finished up his holy work between two thieves. What are you hoping for? He's asking us, what are you hoping for? He's saying, think a little. He gives all this example of Jesus, and he says, what are you hoping for? If you're waiting for an easy life and situations of prominence in the world, remember the Master and think a little. That spirit of the first order who came here knowing his mission, obviously, and to teach us so much through his example, through his words, through his actions, through everything that he did. He had such a hard time here. How can we expect to have an easier time? That's why Emmanuel was saying, think a little. Because if we stop to think a little bit, we're going to realize that we're not on a planet of pure happiness, full of divine beings, billionaires, in the sense of spiritual age. We're not there yet, but we'll get there. But right now we're in a process of spiritual depuration, of going through these layers. So when we think about us, I invite everybody to think about the depuration. I invite everybody to think about these different layers and how we can better navigate these goals, these problems, these challenges that come to us with faith, with resignation, with understanding, with humility, exercising charity, and with a lot of love. As all the spiritual guides tell us, we must face these challenges and take advantage of these obstacles because we don't know when they're going to come again, and we don't know when we're going to have the same opportunity that we have right now. We have a unique opportunity right now, so we must have faith and continue to purify ourselves in that way. I wish everybody a very blessed week, and I hope that some of this knowledge has helped you today for your inner transformation and eventually through the actions. Thank you.
This is so good, Yuri. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's a topic that you just went through a number of really really amazing references for all of us. So if you took anything from this, I would say let's read, let's access all the amazing teachings that we are receiving through Emmanuel, through Joanna de Angelis, and through the higher spirits via the codification by Allan Kardec. So those are, just gems of treasure that we should be able to access. So this is really great for us. Let us walk out today with that sense that it is all a process, right, Yuri? But Yuri, before we close today, would you be able to just say final words, a prayer, or anything that you would like for our viewers today?
Absolutely. I think we can do a prayer
Okay.
to close our work here today. So I'm going to invite everybody find a comfortable position to close their eyes if they would like, and elevate our thoughts to our Creator, to God, just with a feeling of gratitude, elevating a thought to say, thank you, God. Thank you, Master Jesus. And thank you to all the higher spirits that always help us in our path. Thanks to everybody that contributes to our lives, that blesses us with their protection, with their guidance. Just this amazing feeling of gratitude emanating from our hearts through a thought of gratitude. Let us thank those who help us in our journey, be it for a day, for a month, for a year. Let us also open our hearts and our minds for the knowledge and the teachings of Spiritism that are so helpful in our path to the spiritual depuration. And so be it.
So be it. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.